So this is April, Beth.
Yeah, I know. My dog was barking.
I
Yeah, it was just a
understand.
mess here.
I got a notification that she went into the March meeting. So I'm like, you're in the wrong meeting.
Well, I was super early, so it's
Well, I
okay.
kept thinking today was Thursday. So I'm right there with you. Things are crazy. Rosalind had a meeting, but she's here, and Kay is new. Welcome, Kay. Would you like to give us a little short background on yourself, or
Well, I know you and I know Rosalind.
that's
Hi,
great.
Rosalind.
Hi, Kay.
Rosalind and I met in Polly Castor's abstract workshop last fall, and the painting that I was working from today was one of the last ones I did there, which was supposed to be something abstracty, but I always start abstract and end up not abstract. I think Rosalind and I suffer from the same.
Yep.
But it was
I
a
was
wonderful
told
workshop.
off a few times by Polly.
Yeah, no, but it was wonderful. It really stretched me in ways that I needed to be stretched. So I met Terry Lynn through the Pastel Society of Maine, and she's done some amazing demos for us and teaching, not demos, teaching sessions. And such a great teacher that I thought I would join this at least a while and give it a shot. So I've retired to the coast of Maine, Rockland area, Rockland, and
I know where that is.
yeah, come visit. And it's great, lots of art here, and it's a plein air. Well, I missed a life drawing class today. There's another one tomorrow. There's a plein air group meeting Thursday. There's another life drawing class Friday, Saturday. So there's lots of opportunities to be active, as well as all the exhibitions. So it's a great art area.
Excellent. Rose had invited me up to Waterville to do a demo for a group that she's in, and they do a lot of, is it your group that does a lot of plein air things too? Yep. So
Yeah, in warm months, obviously, yeah.
great. So Will and Beth are from North Carolina, the Asheville area, just so you know. And but let's get talking. Well, we are talking. I'm sorry. So this last month, let's jump right into our exercises we did, because that's pretty exciting. Zoom has this new thing where the menu bar gets right in my way. I put this up really quickly because people were having trouble getting into the Zoom. And ideas, I liked your ideas. Basically, I think it's coming down to one person, or we had some interest in values, like working with different values. And surprisingly, that's exactly what I have planned for next month. And then Will, I'd like you brought this up, and it seems that both Rosalind and Beth are interested in this, and well, the sweet spot. Can we chat about that a little bit for a second? What do you guys mean by the sweet spot?
I think when you look at a landscape, which is what I tend to do, and you have just hundreds of miles and thousands of trees and clouds and everything else, and finding a way to sort of teach yourself to narrow down to where the sweet spot is. I mean, you've got the little viewfinder. People use that, and they walk around looking at trees, which I always find that kind of interesting. Or they find a rock in a tree and get excited. But what's it's sort of like, where's Waldo? Where's the thing that you really should be drawing? What really attracts you to it? What gives it that scene, whatever it's a square or a rectangle, whatever, or circle? Why does that have good structure, and is it worth painting, or are you just going to waste another piece of paper? So and so that's sort of my where's Waldo kind of thing.
Excellent. Okay, Beth, is that kind of what you were looking for, and Rosalind as well too? So go ahead.
Yeah, for me, yes, but I know I have trouble when I look at the shoreline. So it can be any ocean shoreline. And I recently got back from California about the time that I was taking my first class, my first watercolor class with Terry Lynn. And I had this beautiful photograph. To me, it was absolutely beautiful. And she said, where's your sweet spot? And I'm like, how do you narrow that down when you're looking at that? And I suppose the same thing can be true if you're looking at a whole bunch of trees. And so I kept thinking, well, maybe where the light hits or whatever. And I was having trouble with that. And I said, well, I guess I could put a surfer in there. They're all along the coast there, And so, but I understand what Will was saying. When you're looking at something broad, I look at it and I see the whole thing as a whole. Sometimes I can identify right away, okay, that's the star. That's where I want to focus and pull my colors to and that kind of thing. But sometimes I can't. And so then I'm not sure what to do.
Okay.
I'm taking a Jacob Aguiar Patreon thing, and someone asked him last night, how do you find a scene? Because very often he'll paint a scene which initially looks pretty boring, and doesn't have like the party going on. And he said, I look for where the light is falling and how that affects the scene. And that it's the transient light that draws him to that. And then he builds the scene around it. So.
Because it's true, if you look at Jacob's paintings, they're beautiful landscapes, but there's no like subject or object that like, that's the thing he's doing. He creates this beautiful glowing thing. So yeah, how to choose that? I mean, obviously, if you're out on doing plein air, it's tricky, but we'll have to work with photos and stuff. And I can maybe what is next, June, I can work on that. Rosalind, you also, is that kind of what you're looking for as well?
Yeah, it is, because last summer I took a workshop and everyone else was sitting down and starting, and I was looking around and saying, sort of wandering around in my mind and on my feet, turning my easel around, trying to figure out. I had an index card with a hole cut out, and I'm going like this, and I just couldn't identify what I should be doing. Eventually I did, but it was hard work.
I'll tell you, I don't set up until I found my sweet spot anyway.
Yeah.
If I go to plein air, I look around. So
I had a pottery teacher, and her thing, pottery is not pastel, but it's still, she would say, where's the party? If she's looking at a piece that's on my wheel, where's the party? Which means, is the whole thing just a boring mess, or are there so many parties that there's no one party that stands out that attracts you to that piece? So it's not exclusive to pastel or art or anything. It's I don't care if you're sketching with charcoal, you sort of need a party. You need something that draws the eye into it.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, it just comes with training.
the reason for being, the raison d'etre of your painting. Okay, is that something sounds good to you too, or? And Rose?
I don't know. I watch people like you and Tara Will paint, and basically you can take anything and make it marvelous by what you do with it. And so I'm trying not to look so hard for the sweet spot anymore, and trying to figure out how to take something that maybe is, okay, let me start over. So sometimes you take a really great photograph and you can never make a painting that's as good as the photograph. And this is something Polly talked about, Rosalind, if you remember at the workshop. Sometimes a bad photograph makes a better painting.
Yeah.
Because you're not trying to compete with the photograph. And what I do with an image is I keep blowing it up, and then I keep moving it around on my screen, so it serves as a virtual viewfinder. And then I just look at relationships that look interesting to me and go from there. But I used to look for the sweet spot, but I kind of stopped doing that, if you know what I mean. Just looking for interesting relationships, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
Look what Tony Elaine does, with his lakes and mountains. And if he needs a sparkle, he puts the sparkle in. If he needs snow on the cap of the mountains, he puts the snow in the middle of July. But he uses his device to make it a better painting.
Right. And I can't do that yet, but that's where I want to go. I want to be in that direction. Rather
Yeah,
than
learning
having,
how to focus in. I remember back in the university taking classes, we had one teacher who'd take us outside, sit us down in the most boring place and say, make a nice piece, you know, and trying to take whatever you have in front of you and make it interesting or enchanting or something. But I think that's a good something to work on. Sound good? Is June okay for that? I mean, that's because I've got May kind of wrapped up. All right, I'm going to go back to Padlet. I kind of had fun here with Bella Tarsk because we were talking about limited strokes. And this just, after I had talked with you folks, beautiful painting. So I just kind of popped that up to share. You could probably count his strokes as we did with the presentation. Will, I hope I have these in order.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, I'm going to go through. So
Yeah,
This-
there's my reference, and I was playing on that, and I painted it the first time, and it was clumsy as hell. So I took it and put it in the laundry sink and scrubbed. This is on pastel board, so I scrubbed it with a scrub brush and got it back to the underpainting. Try that next one, and then I think there's an underpainting in there, and then I put in gesso. This is while it was still wet, but once it dried, a lot of those strokes disappeared. And then
sorry, finger.
then I did a repaint. Go ahead, so sort of scroll through it.
Yeah.
At the end, I then went back and did the exercise. This is 50 strokes, trying to
Oh, okay.
explain the painting that I did in as few strokes as possible. And this was 50.
Okay.
And this was scrubbed back to the underpainting. This stayed on the pastel board. So I obviously had really ground it in. And then go ahead. Thank again. And I think this is the root. Is that?
Am I backwards? Yeah.
That's the redo that I did. That's where I am right now.
Okay. So this looks like quite a few strokes, right?
Oh, that's hundreds of strokes.
Yeah.
I wasn't counting there. It was that No-Tan that I did. That was the 50 stroke challenge
Right here. Okay.
right there.
Yeah.
So I painted that scene now 4 times. So it'll probably be another one.
And is this the most recent one?
Next one.
Next one.
Oh.
Oh, hold
Maybe
on.
that must be the final.
Yeah.
Or the current. Let's say current.
The current.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Any comments? It was hard. You had emailed me the paintings and I wasn't sure which order to put them in. So
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
no, that's okay.
you did the charcoal sketch first.
No, the charcoal 50 strokes I did last. That was that one. I did that after my second or third attempt, basically to try to pare it down to what the basics was with. It's actually a little piece of Create Color, and trying to tell that story with 50 strokes, and that's just on a piece of Strathmore.
I think that works well. I mean, to me, it's the same image in a very simple way.
Mhm.
Yeah. Nice. Do you think it was beneficial to try this?
Would I have done it without the
Yeah, you wouldn't
exercise?
have.
Probably not, but it sort of taught me what 50 strokes can do, and I could probably do that at the beginning to fully understand the scene before I plunge off the edge. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's nice. It helps us to find the essence of that image, like the most
Yeah.
basic
But
thing.
pastel board really takes the abuse. I did a piece, I
That
worked
look-
on a piece yesterday, and then today it was Italian clay, and then after I slathered on the alcohol, I read up on it and said that you shouldn't use heavy alcohol on Italian clay, and I've proven that. So I guess I'll use another piece.
It was that aboard the Italian clay or is it the paper one?
Paper one.
Yeah, okay.
It's
'Cause I was
pastel,
thinking if it was the board, you could wash it all off and then put some pumice gel on it or something.
pastel premier Italian clay, but this, the one I was using at the base of this thing was a pastel board, and God, you can just run a car over it. It's just so, it just begs abuse. And
Yeah.
then you can throw the pumice gel on top of that and get your tooth back. But it still had, even though I was scrubbing it with a brush, it still had a lot of tooth.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm finding more and more I'm going to surfaces that I can reuse if I have to. I'm not gonna
Yep.
mess around with anymore. Sorry, Sennelier paper is beautiful, but you know, if it doesn't come out, I can't reuse it. I can't
Yep.
wash it back down. Rosalind, these are beautiful. Out in the garden,
Yeah, that's my front garden.
look at those. Was this the first? Is this correct?
Yeah, that's the first one. So I think that was what, 280 or something.
Isn't
Um,
it awful trying to count your strokes while you're trying to paint?
It was awful. I ended up having to keep a notepad and a pencil next to me so I could write down every now and then what I had just done. Because I found it was easier to just say, okay, on these flowers, how many strokes is it going to take me to outline a little bit? And then I wrote that down and then I went from there. But I lost track on this one. So, but
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's about 280. So this, yeah, the next one, what I tried to do to reduce the number of strokes on this one was keep the background, it's a really dark green actually, even though it looks black.
Mhm.
Is to try and do that by just putting it on its side and dragging it across the paper. And so it did not take too many strokes to do that. I just had to wiggle it around as I went across.
Yeah.
What are
You're
you
on
painting on?
Canson paper? Yeah, is this
Yeah.
Canson Me
Yeah, it's just, I thought I've got all this Canson Mi-Tente paper and I thought this would be a great way to use some of it.
I would turn it over and use the backside.
Yeah, I thought I had done that, but clearly not. And the other thing that I'm thinking about doing is taking that paper and putting pastel ground on it. So I just don't like it very much to use it.
Yeah, I'm not.
So this one was I looked at it and I stepped back and went, there's starfish. So I lost the 6 petals. So, but still, it was really informative doing this.
And I'm liking how you're beginning to tie the areas together because you're doing it so quickly.
Right.
See how these are connected and that makes a nice flow across this paper.
I also just limited my number of colors so that I wouldn't be tempted to do more than a certain number of strokes. So I just put all my other pastels away and just kept out.
It's a good idea. Were you the one that asked me, like, if you do a stroke and then don't pick up the pastel, but keep moving, if that's one stroke? Was that, somebody asked me
Yeah,
that?
no, that was me. And so what I did with this was wiggle. You know, I took my pastel and I went across the page.
So you're
I
like,
tried not to go-
one.
Yeah, I tried not to go backwards or to abruptly change direction, but anyway, that's why I thought that cheating seems to be the only way I'm going to get this done. So at any rate, that's what I did with the background here. You can kind of see it. It did not leave the page, and I made no abrupt turns, but at any rate.
I don't know if it's cheating or not. I thought that was an ingenious way of dealing with this situation.
And this was the last one, which was 98 strokes, and I counted them very carefully. But then I thought, does it even look like a daffodil? But then now that I look at it, it really does look kind of daffodilish.
They do. I mean, it's yellow. It has the essence, I believe. What do you think,
Yeah.
folks think?
Mhm.
I'm gonna
I
go
love-
back. to the-
So anyway, then when I
Oh,
put them
yeah,
all
here.
together,
Yeah,
I taped them up. You know, these aren't very big, so taping them all up together was fun. And I thought, well, it looks kind of like a daffodil garden.
which one did you feel was the most successful once you finished this?
Well, I think there are two different kinds of successes, success in the challenge and success in the way the painting looks. I think the ones I like the best are the first one and the last one.
This one here and this one down here?
Yeah.
I still kind of like this one. I like how these are tied together. You've also tied them together here and created interesting shape. Like if you just squint down and see just the yellow shapes and the dark shapes there, it's interesting going across. Very
Well,
nice.
the thing that I found too was when you're using a bigger, like I was using half sticks and longer sticks, to get the maximum stroke effect. You don't get, you can't be tempted to get too much into detail. So it's not like I was doing my usual, you know, floral detail thing. And that was good for me. It was good not to get into, let's try and make this an exact representation of the daffodil.
I think it's great that, you know, here or even here, you have the sense of daffodils. And then once you lay it in and you get that essence down, then if you want, you can come back and really work on and build that. I've been working on this week, and I was doing a workshop on Saturday and limiting my strokes. And I've taken one of the paintings that I did and I'm making it a big one. I was so happy with it. So something like this, you could look through and go, oh, I really, really like this one. Now I want to do a larger, more, what I call more serious painting with it, you know, more, I don't like the word serious, but that's what I kind of think.
Anyway, it was worthwhile. You know, it was funny. I was laughing at them, but it was really worthwhile.
Good, I'm glad you got happy. Laughing at it. Anyone, any comments? I'm just going to keep going along. Okay. Beth. Now, Kay, Beth is working in watercolor right now. She does do pastels, but she's focusing on watercolors. So this is her image. You're on mute, Beth.
Okay, so yeah, I did not send all of the ones that I did of this. I sent, I think that was my first one, and I think that was the first one. I didn't count it. I mean, I tried, but but I also was doing wet on wet in the background, and I quit that after this piece because there's just no way I could do that and count strokes, especially when I'm laying in color. And I kept wondering, well, if I'm not stroking, I'm just dripping it on there, does that count as a stroke? And I thought, this is ridiculous.
Sounds like Rosalind.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, when you're thinking that, you're trying, I mean, it was just like, I don't know. So anyway, that's why I didn't include all of them in there, because there were some renditions of this where I did stuff like that. But I did have fun, and I was laughing at myself with it, because it was just, you know, what it forced me to do. I kept thinking, okay, squint at it. Well, that didn't make any difference. You know, I was just having fun with it. So that was my first one, and I didn't count it. This was the last one that I did. And I don't remember what I wrote on there. I did count them, and I wrote it on a piece of paper, and I put it in the print below that on the Padlet. I just don't remember what it was.
Oh, no.
But at any rate, I did decrease it by quite a bit and made it to like 150 or close to 200 or some, I don't even remember.
85 strokes here.
85. Okay. That was that one. That was 85. And, you know, what made me laugh at it, the trees are the last thing that I put in there. And I figured, well, if I'm only at about 80 strokes, I can put some trees in. And then I was thinking about that. And of course I ended up with 3 right smack in the middle, and I just went, okay. And they're all lined up and they're just, like, so, but I had fun with it because, and I enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it because I think it does remind you what that essence is, and I quit counting. Okay, how many mountains do I count back there, and I just quit doing it. And I didn't even, with this one, I didn't even lay in anything. I just started to paint. And so that was fun.
Nice. Yeah, this is more defined. But if you look closely at the washes here, these are good. These, because you did it so simply and quickly and probably so many times, you've got a lot of nice soft washes going on in the mountains, and a lot of the settling in at the edge of that. And
Well, and honestly, that is because I mixed all of these colors. So I mixed all of the colors ahead of time. I think it was last month where I talked about the work I did the previous month with all the pigments. And so that really set me up to be able to mix colors now. And it makes such a difference.
yeah,
So
yeah, you really focus on that. Anyone else? Comments?
I like the softness of the edges on this last one.
mhm.
I agree that tree is that's a trap that sucks you in. I mean, but the way the mountains and the sky work together, I think that's pretty wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this one really goes back in space very nicely. Yeah. Yep, little soldier trees standing right there.
Yep.
Yep, yep, yep. Rose, this is your reference photo. I love this. She did the dog. Rose, because she was just sharing with us what she's been working on for a commission, but then she also did the exercise as well.
Yeah, because I wasn't sure how much time I was going to have for the exercise, but I ended up getting the dog done much faster than I had expected. It's one of the
fascinating to watch how you work too, like this. Like
Yeah.
this is almost completely done, and you've barely done anything back here. So
Yeah, I'm very strange at the way I draw and where I start my focus on. It's just where my hand and eye decide to go first. And so, but I also didn't want to draw it because there's a lot of fur going around the mouth. So I felt that one of the first things to do was to finish the mouth so that I wouldn't get carried away and start playing with the fur going around the mouth before I got the tongue finished and the coloring in the mouth finished.
because it's
Are
hard.
these pastel pencils?
Pastel pencils and soft pastels as well.
And soft, okay.
Black dog. I like how you use the blue.
There's some new pastel. There's quite a bit of Rembrandt. Hey, there's quite a bit of Rembrandt, Terry Ludwig's, and yes, there is some pastel pencils with the whoops. I'm pointing at, like, you guys can see what I'm pointing at here. The edges of the fur that come out around the mouth is pastel pencils.
Right around here.
Yeah.
I love how you always make the nose seem so alive and so shiny. It's really great. My only
Feel the texture, and it feels like if I put my hand under that chin, I'm going to feel the wet drool.
Yeah.
that is great. She's excellent at animals. This green to me is it's pulling my attention quite a bit.
Yeah, and it's the color on the collar, and I felt the same way because it just is the only thing. But for some people, the collar is just as important as the animal that they're sending to me, and I find that a lot with greyhounds. The collar is very important.
Wow.
Yeah.
Rose, do you grid a painting up like that, or do you project it, or
No.
is that's just
I freehand. It's very strange how we start. Like I said, when I started drawing this, I started with the nose and went to the mouth and then moved outward. Sometimes I start with the eye, and it's just really strange because it's hard for me to teach somebody how to draw because I draw so much differently than other people. My point of reference, or my beginning point, is so different, and you would think that my perspective was so thrown off as a result of it, but it's not.
And what's your paper? What are you drawing on?
I like using Clairefontaine.
Okay.
Nice.
It's my favorite.
I like that you left this soft gray in the background for this one too, and didn't do anything in the background.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, sorry, I'm just moving along. So
that's okay.
this is one of your few stroke paintings.
Yes. So this is these are small pictures, very small. They're actually leftover. So when I cut a piece of my Clairefontaine down to a size that for my commission that's been requested to, whatever's left over, if it isn't used for mark making, I play around with like this. So literally there's only like 3 strokes in the background for pastel. This is all done with all of that one is done with Terry Ludwig.
This I like a lot.
Yeah.
Really? I almost didn't post it because I thought they were all so childlike.
I love this one.
But I really worked hard at trying to make as little, and I didn't count my marks, but I really worked hard to try to make as little marks as possible, which is very hard for me to leave something so undone.
But you get the essence. I mean, this absolutely says bee on a flower. I mean, it's great, I think. Your background still, we've talked about this before, still seems a little like, what am I doing with the background?
Yeah,
So this line right here is just going to pull the eye right off.
yeah.
But this is wonderful. And you had one more.
I kind of like those lines because to me, it gives motion to the bee, like he just came in for a landing. Like that's almost like it's the little zoom behind the bee.
It is one of the tricks, I guess I am pointing out is that it goes almost directly off the corner. It can go, if it
Yeah.
goes off like here or here,
Right.
it makes such a difference visually. That pulls the eye off, and then it's hard they've done studies, with those looking at
Oh,
people's
no, yeah,
eyes
you're
and
right. But
yeah.
But the marks are good for
the
getting
energy.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I like this. It's unusual because the bee is there and it's a solid bee. It's a figure, but it's not drawn in a solid way. It's drawn just.
Look how
those
much of the
little- those
paper
little
is
mini
showing. through.
strokes are just.
Yeah.
They're not bee, but altogether they create bee, if you know
Yeah.
what I mean.
Yeah.
It's almost like just the fuzz. The no bee, just all fuzz, but it really tells that story.
Yes. Excellent.
Fuzz
And
or pollen or whatever.
yeah, love it.
And
Squash
I-
flower.
I don't even know what to say about this one.
You said something in the comments like you get carried away with the details or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Anne wanted us to go over hers, if that's okay. She's not here, but let me just look back again. Limited strokes, 250, 220, 100. Okay, so she's going down as we go along. Strokes. Love the feeling of this very hazy kind of gray day. This looks like me temp paper as well. Sometimes that texture just gets in the way, but here she's got an underpainting that's popping through. That's a nice way. If you're going to limit strokes, if you have an underpainting, it often helps.
I like that.
I like this. Look how simple, just a couple colors and the marks very strong and simple right here. Squint down, saying it.
Nice colors.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And then this one.
Really, one of the things that makes it is that under that ground, it's pretty cool.
It really helps it, doesn't it? Kind of pulls the whole thing together. Is that the last one?
I like that one. It looks very futuristic.
It's almost abstract. And then I think when we get to this point, it is almost abstract. And if we can build and make our abstract solid and readable, and then build on top of that, it's wonderful. And I think this is her more finished one of this.
It's beautiful.
Look at the color of the sky. Again, that she seems to have that orange underpainting, but Will, that reminds me of your last one. That's almost that same color that you had in the sky.
And this is not in the same paper, so she's not fighting that bloody texture that all the rest of them are doing.
Yeah.
I have a real problem when I don't use it because I've learned that it will basically take over my painting. But
Yeah.
she hasn't used it here, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, if you have this texture, right, and you put some sort of underpainting, it will help pull it together and wash. But the texture is still, to me, very mechanical, and that's the thing that I don't like. That's why I've always tried to turn the paper over to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is her.
Wade Zaharis uses that paper, but he just turns it over and uses the other side, and he makes it work, which surprises me. He even uses that.
I did. Hey, I did that. I'm sorry.
Who does that?
Wade Zaharis. Am I saying his name right, Terry?
Wade
Lynn?
Zaharis. Yep, he's from Maine.
He's a professional book illustrator and beautiful paintings.
I'll tell you what, from college up until about 5 years ago, that's the only paper I used. I had no idea there was sanded paper until about 5 years ago. And I discovered that and I kind of went wild, but I would turn it over and just somehow I made it work. Those are beautiful. Okay, Nova Scotia. Wow.
Yeah, that's the Bay of Fundy behind there. So it's got those extreme tidal fluxes.
Yeah.
Funky little.
I've gotten up to Rogers Bay and Campobello, but
They have funny little lighthouses. They're not like Maine lighthouses.
is this the most strokes? I didn't.
Yeah, so that's on that seems to be cut off, but that's on a big, I don't know, like 18 by 12 art spectrum sanded paper.
Really?
And I did that at a workshop, and we had sort of limited time to work on it, and she wanted us to make it sort of abstract, but it ended up not being very abstract. But I have this tendency to overwork paintings. I'll do a study, and the study will end up being better than the finished painting because the study has fewer strokes. And so since I wasn't happy with the way this turned out. There's a lot of things wrong with it. And some of the color, which now after your color workshop the other week, I now know I needed to keep my blues in the same family. But anyway, because that headland in the back just doesn't work at all with that turquoise sea. So the color is, there's a lot of things that are disturbing about this.
Yeah.
But I thought that would be a good one just to try
Yeah.
Now I've got about an hour to do everything. Because I
It's
just
good sometimes to do that. That's
But you know what? Fewer strokes doesn't mean necessarily faster strokes. I think if you have more time, so you consider each stroke, and I didn't have that time, so I was going few and fast and furious and few. But it still was good. It was still
trying
good.
to be very judicious, even though you have fewer, make the ones
Right.
that you're going to use count for something.
But I made some discoveries, like in the photograph, if you notice, the foreground is bluish gray gravel. See that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's nice. And I didn't get that in the first painting, but by the last one with the fewest strokes, I got that, and that helps. So
Good.
it was a discovery process. It was a great discovery process. And if I had more time to really be judicious with the strokes, I could have, worked on the other things. So the whole thing was to try to find the essence. At least I think that's what this is about. And the essence is the contrast between the light and the water that you see in these tidal flats, and the reflective water and the less reflective hard surfaces, and the patterns that they make,
Yeah.
And so you can make any pattern. It doesn't have to be the one in the photograph, obviously. And if I could just get rid of the lighthouse, I'd be happy, because it kept smearing into the sky, which is why I put that ideas for consideration. How do you fix a mess? Because you have a nice sky, then you put the lighthouse on and you miss with your red new pastel, and it goes off into your nice pale sky, and like,
Well, the question that I see artists asking their students or themselves, is the lighthouse necessary? Does it deserve to be there? And you can edit it out if it's not telling part of the story.
yeah, it's hard to not make a lighthouse a cliche unless you do it really well. Like Terry Lynn, you recently did a sort of bird's eye view of was it Pemaquid?
Yeah.
That was cool.
I
You
had
know.
to think of that. And I'm like, well, like, I understand the building cube and the structure and stuff. Why don't
Yeah,
I
that was in
do?
your perspective. Yeah, that was amazing. So I almost left the lighthouse out, but I felt like I had to at least try to render the lighthouse with a few strokes since it was about the exercise and not really about the painting. So
Yeah, it does kind of balance out this headland out
it
here.
does. Yeah.
But if you're looking at this as almost an abstract, you're right. Yeah. Do we really need it? So
Yeah, if I put my thumb over it, I like it better. But yeah.
I love the texture down here when you just skimmed over. There's that blue in that sand in the foreground, but you have the textures with that wonderful brown showing through the blue, and then that. And I was driving past mud flats coming back tonight, and I'm thinking, okay, the mud is, and I'm trying to keep this in my head, like this greenish brown. And then there's always a skim of that blue over the top because the wetness is still there and it's reflecting the skies. So a nice sanded paper like this works really well for that.
Yeah. So this was a good exercise. I was starting to get the feel for what I wanted to do if I redo this. And so thank you for that.
Yeah, well, great. That's kind of what I was hoping that, how do I stop share? There it is. You know, just doing some of these exercises so we approach each painting differently, and by doing a little of this and a little of that, then we have more of a toolkit to choose from as we're going along in our paintings, and we come back to it. So I liked these. I thought these were exciting and very nice little paintings as well. Were most of you working quite small?
Yes,
Yeah,
it was.
which is great for sketching and doing like thumbnails anyway, not too small. I do my little black and white sketches quite small, but normally I'm working 4x5, something like that, 5x7. Okay, so we'll move. Whoa, I think we're having fun. Everybody's talking quite a bit. I'm gonna put this up for next month. Want to work with the impact of values. And how can we build on what we've been doing but limit our value range? We did studies before, how many marks. And of course, I'm still using my little tree because I'm very familiar with it and I like it. I will hand out this sheet. Our value scale, of course, going 1 to 10. That's the typical way. And then choosing like a value of just the lighter ones, just the middle tones, and just the dark values as we're going along. And I recommend that we try one image. So I did a start painting that went from 1s to 10, you know, in the value scale in the painting, then all light values or a high key painting, mid values, a mid key painting, and then low values. And it's wonderful how something like this can become a nocturne so quickly. And this, of course, is the Padlet for next month. And I have my little preparation videos if you'd like. Yes. Okay. This one. Sorry, I'm gonna move it around on mine.
The impact of values in painting is powerful. We should often consider it before we even consider a color scheme. All the values, from light to midtones to dark shades. Often, if we keep them in a grouping like analogous values, then our painting can have more impact. When we work with a limited range, it gives us great effects. Here, light values grouped together without any darks gives us a sense of sun-washed, even if it's hazy. It's uplifting, it's joyful, it's exciting. We can almost get the sense of walking from a dark room into brilliant sunlight. A painting of mid-values often gives us a sense that's muted light, dusk or early dawn, fog or rain. It's restful and it's quiet and draws us in. Even with brilliant color, that neutral value scale gives us a sense of calm. A dark value grouping is great for nocturnes. It gives us a sense of night, of possibly being lost or unsure or even protected in a deep way. A low-key painting can give us a sense of mystery, of impending doom, of that dark of night just before dawn. Here are 3 of my paintings in the high key value zone, a mid-key range, and then one in a low-key range. Value is one of the most powerful elements that we have in our paintings. So what's a good way to proceed to experiment with these concepts? Number 1, let's choose some pastels. We'll group them in value ranges, high, mid-range, and low range. Then it's a good idea to take a picture of them and desaturate the photo so you can see the value ranges, the lights, the middles, and the deeper colors. My next video has a demonstration of how I used each of these families. This is all the ranges from light to dark. Here is a high key painting using just those chosen colors. Here is a mid key painting with the colors that I set aside ahead of time. And here is a low key painting. And you can see the difference between these and the impact of the values that I have chosen, even though it's the same image. This is a great way to explore what you might want to do with an image. It gives you choices. You can do it more than once, and it gives you a variety of emotion and expression in the painting. So go watch the demo video now, and that'll explain a lot more. And thank you for being my Patreon supporters.
Any questions before I go on to the demo or?
So Terry,
Yes.
and one of the things that Polly's workshop was transformative. So even though it was a challenge for me, right, it made a huge difference to me. And she had us take pictures like you did and desaturate them. And one of the things that she said was this 80-20 rule, where you would have, to add interest, you would have 80% of light value and 20% of dark, or 20% dark, you know, and then 80% dark and 20% light, because you need to have some sort of contrast in there. But that's the figure she gave us, the 80-20.
Yes, typically speaking, that is a great balance like that.
Mhm.
These exercises are going to push us a little bit more. Like if we were looking at some of those other paintings, we saw like the not Winslow Homer, who was it? Was the Nocturne one, the first one there. Sorry.
Turner.
Whistler?
Whistler, thank you. Yes, it was a Whistler painting. It's almost all dark
Mhm.
to get that Nocturne with just a couple little sparkles. And that's, you're right, the 20-80 is a great rule, but sometimes we bend the rules to get a different sense out of our paintings. And by learning how to limit the values, then we can also go on. So you'll do, hopefully, if you want to do this exercise, I feel like, you know, Mission Impossible, Mr. Phelps, if you choose to do this one, you know. So, you know, I did 4, a high key, mid key, low key, and then I did one that had more balanced. Let me show you the demo. And
Before you do,
yes,
the focus on that, whatever you're using to show it, a lot of it was a little out of focus on my computer. Did anybody else feel that some of the paintings weren't focused, or is it?
Mm-mm.
Mine were fine. It was fine for me.
Wonder what's going on with that.
I'm wondering, Kate, because you remember early on in the meeting, you froze for a bit. So
Yeah.
But I'm gonna put these up. I'll link them on the Patreon page and I mean on the Padlet page so you can watch them again, definitely
Okay.
close up. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, that's frustrating when that happens.
May just be my internet speed.
That's what I'm wondering.
So,
And I only say that because of that you froze up early on. So
Mm,
and you went off and came back in, didn't you? Or
yeah, but everything else has been clear. So it's
Yeah.
just the video really that was fuzzy.
could be. All right. Let me play.
The impact of values. These are demos of 4 different approaches to the same photo. To the left here is some photos that I've adjusted for something else and I've made them warm or cool. But in these demonstrations, I am going to do a full contrast, kind of a typical painting that you would do from the original photo. And that is this little sketch right here. I lay in the background with pen pastels, trying to give it a foggy feeling. I'm working with a limited palette in blues and greens. A little bit of layering, tying the colors together in this little sketch. If you can't reach something or your hand gets in the way, I use my other hand. You can do that. Creativity comes from the brain, not from our hands. Although our dominant hand also tends to have more muscle memory in what we're doing, we can also train our secondary hand to do that as well. Here's the second little sketch. Again, I quickly lay in some background with my pen pastels and my biggest sponges. Well, just one sponge. And I learned that in the academy, that use the largest tool possible for as long as possible to keep it loose and flowing and tied together as well. This image, as you can see, is using the high key pastels that I pre-chose. These are values of, say, 1, which is white, to about maybe 4. And I want to see, even with the different colors, the different hues, keeping it high, what kind of feeling this can give us in our painting. The difference between the typical painting on the left and the more high key painting. Just working in some of my negative spaces around that little tree. I'm not terribly concerned about the image at this point, but the feeling that I'm going to get from this with those colors and the lightness. You know, I've painted this image a number of times, so I'm very familiar with it. And that helps me to lay in the changes that I want. That is here, the value changes. And I can do it rather quickly. I decided it was a little too light, so I added in a little bit more depth. And you can see that deeper green is still only about 3.5 or 4 on the value scale. My next step is working with the midtones. I can lay in the image, the tree and the house and stuff, with a vine charcoal, because even though it seems dark here, it can be lightened very easily. And this helps give me an armature on which to build my color, just kind of by laying this in quickly. I added some midtones with the hand pastel. Again, I am working with pre-chosen colors and values. On this one, I'm working values between maybe 4 to 6, trying to keep it limited that way so I can compare eventually the 4 paintings. The typical approach with all values in it, the high key painting, which is values 1 to maybe 4, my mid key, which is around 4 to 6, and then I'll do a low key painting where most of the values will be, say, 7 to 10. By using the same subject, the same image, it's very easy to compare the impact of these values on the viewer. And it helps us decide quickly which way we want to go in our painting, if we want to do a large painting after this. Notice how that mid-tone color covers that fine charcoal quite easily, but there's a little bit peeking through, so it still works quite well. Again, sticking with blues and greens, my pre-chosen hues, but being very aware of the values. That might be about a 4 there, putting that in. Trying to keep that as one of my lightest. Defining the shape of the building behind, very subtly, it's off in the distance. I want to unify the sky a little bit more. So I do a glaze of this value over the whole sky. I'm blending a bit, which I don't often do, but the texture of this paper is just not the best for glazing. I do kind of like this one. It gives a sense of that heavy gray, overcast day, fogginess. Seems to work well for this image. I'm adding a little definition. I'm getting a little tied up in this painting. A little more depth here. Still keeping it around the 6 or 7 value. Fine charcoal is great for that. I'm actually working the composition here a little bit, balancing it out.
Spending too much time on it. That's what I was doing.
I've been using the warmer tones for that snow fence. I like the softness of that value of the magenta or purplish red against the blue. Brings it out a little bit, brings that forward as well. And you noticed I also tied a little bit of it into the tree and the peak of the roof in the distance. You don't notice those immediately, but it does help bring the elements of the painting together, ties them together. And now for the final one, this is my deeper values. Again, laying in the overall foundational color with my pan pastels and the large sponge. Keeping these values in the 7 to 10 range.
If you don't have the pan pastels, you can do a
This
wash
time instead of the vine
on the
charcoal,
background.
I'm choosing one of the colors that I have set aside to lay in the subject matter. Your low key paintings are great for evening images like moonlight or dusk. So it's good to practice these and to try it on different images so you become familiar with the possibilities that pastels and the values offer to you. Yep, always check. I have a little sandpaper off to the side. Always check to make sure your pastel is going to do what you want it to do. If you notice that first stroke had some skips in it, so I double checked it and went back. Tying what eventually will be those warm tones for the snow fence into the tree and the peak of the roof. These sketches are maybe about 4 by 5 inches. Great to do smaller sketches or even thumbnails to plan out what you want to do. That way you can quickly, as I've said again, you can quickly see what you might want as your effect. Oftentimes when we're just painting intuitively, we don't do as much thinking and we get tied into what the image looks like and we try to make it look like the photo or what's in front of us with all the contrast and all the different colors, and we keep getting pulled into one direction and another, where if you pre-paint, you pre-plan and become familiar and comfortable with certain approaches, then when you go to a larger painting, you have a much better concept of the possibilities. You could do one high key painting for a hazy morning where the sun is just refracting through all the humidity that's in the air and lightening everything. Everything's just a wash of light. Or you can do something like this, that it's a sunrise. Actually, this photo is a sunrise, but look, it's beginning to look like a moonscape. Add little hints of color that the light bounces off here and there. I did make, we'll call it the moon at this point, out of that value range. If you notice, it is more like a 3.5 or 4. But I think for this image, it helped deepen and make the rest of the painting look darker. Here again, I'm just playing around with a little bit more texture and defining the fence and details a little bit more. I've learned a lot in this series. This has been great for me too. And I do hope that you try this out and see what options become possible for you. Here's a photo of the final overall easel, and then going through the mid and low hues, the high and regular values. Individually, the typical painting. Here is my high key, the mid-range, and the low key painting. Do try this exercise. It's revealing of so much, and enjoy painting.
So sounds something kind of to do, practice, try it out. I did cheat on the last one, so I cheat a little bit if you want to cheat a little bit. A nocturne, it is nice to have something really sparkling in there. So again, I mean, you can choose to take the challenge, or you can just paint whatever you'd like to. I think I am too, learning a lot from some of these little challenges. So I will post all of that information.
I have a logistics question because I'm new. When you say you post it, will you send us an email with the new Patreon link, or do we go to Patreon and it'll be there? How does that work?
For these, I put the videos on Patreon, and it's only for this group that it shows up. And I also put it on the Padlet page. Everything's P. I have to stop and think. So I'll also have it on the Padlet page, and I try to tie them together.
So the worksheet for next time will be posted.
Yep, I'll send it out. I'll get it on each thing, the Patreon, the Padlet, and I'll also email you guys about it. So
Good. Thank you.
you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
And the next meeting is, I had that on the sheet. Yeah. I meant to write that down. Will always asks. And anyway, so third Tuesday.
16th.
I think it's the 16th. Yes, 6 p.m. Okay, great. It's great seeing your faces. And Kay, glad to have you here.
Thank you.
All right. Hope to see you again, Rosalind. Keep painting, everyone. Seeing some
Yep.
good things.
Yeah.